So actually, I was just thinking, this is a sort of a very unique audience. And I was just going through that, and then, I happened to see like the numbers, this number of subscriptions that we have in the YouTube channel, right, in the TEDx channel. I know it's not the right way to measure this, but if we compare to the population that we have, it's just about 0.07%. That small is that number. And you happen to be so unique. You're all here, right? You belong to such elite class. I think you should be proud of yourself. You should just give a round of applause. Right? And we all here share common trends. You took time off on a Saturday, you have come here, mainly because you want to invest in yourself. You want to learn something new, right? And you want to change something. And I know we have Dilip here who has actually done something rather than just thinking about it. And we also want to innovate, right? And we have done several things. And I think the theme of this is ideation. And I'm sure you're all here because you want to be in the process of innovation. If you look at this, at the core, we have this faculty called imagination. This is a really wonderful thing. And we have actually seen wonderful videos in the morning, which Abhay and, before the talks of Abhay and all. The difference between the human being and the rest of the animal kingdom. This one particular faculty is the biggest difference. And of course, they do have the imagination, but I think, in our case, this faculty is very well developed. And we had this imagination at its pristine state when we were actually kids. Unfortunately, we polluted that with the logical thinking. We played with the cars. The same car transformed into a military tank. The same car transformed into an airplane. We never thought that wasn't possible. If you really think about the things that were actually one time called improbable or impossible, are possibility today mainly because one person somewhere really imagined that it was possible. And we have several of our speakers today who have made it possible in some way. And Peter Drucker actually coined the word in 1959 called knowledge workers. And the interesting thing, he said, these people think for a living. And he also said that this population will grow. And I'm actually seeing that that growth has actually come faster than what he really anticipated in 1959. Most of us today really rely on our mental strength than the physical strength. We have to wear an activity band to keep us physically active. That, right? So, in my mind, I think this imagination and thinking actually go hand in hand. And I also call these as our strengths. When we are actually working at a mental state, and then, we have this as our strengths. And of course, we do have other strengths, like, analytical skills, analytical thinking. Somebody is good at painting, and somebody is good at, if you give them a complex problem, they probably make it very simple, help you to understand it in a very simple way. We do have other people who make simple things complex, but we don't call that as a strength. So, this power of imagination and thinking, right? When Newton was asked about his discoveries, this is what he has to say. This is the power of thinking. Now, I say this, the strengths are like the spanner. You can use them the way you want. If you turn it in one direction, it gives you one result. If you turn it in another, it gives you the other way. I think you spoke about the technology a lot, right? So if you use the technology for a wrong reason, you get the other result. As we saw in the last talk, we see two things happening to us all the time. When we apply our strengths, we are very satisfied. As per Gallup International research, we'll be happy, we'll be energized when we are actually satisfying our strengths and when we are using our strengths. If not, then we'll be actually dejected. When we apply those strengths and then it gives us a result, happens to be a positive result, as Elizabeth mentioned in the video, it causes a displacement. In the natural state, we are in the equilibrium position and we are displaced either ways. I couldn't, wait, just let me see if I can. Can you guys hear? All right. So when you actually do these things right, you're displaced in one direction. Sometimes you are actually displaced in the opposite direction. Now, who decides this equilibrium? This is you. You have all the control and the power to decide the state of equilibrium. Who decides these displacements? It's the world, it's the situation, it's the things around you. In case, if you align yourself to one of these displacements, you tend to call that either as a success or as a failure. Now, when you align yourself to these two states, you actually experience an emotional state called happiness and unhappiness. Right? Now, let's just take an example. Now, in my own case, as I was a kid, I wanted to be a soldier. And I know I'm a very tall guy, right? You can see that. I didn't know. But then, I wanted to become an engineer, innovator. And I wanted to be a millionaire as well. So I don't want to reveal whether I'm a millionaire or not because of the demonetization thing. But definitely, for the usual reasons, I joined engineering college. Some of you probably will understand what those usual reasons are. And once I joined, I started breaking the mold. I took up computer science when actually mechanical and civil were the things that were actually in vogue at that point of time, mainly because those two branches had the highest possibility of getting a government job when private job was considered as almost equal to jobless, right? So I had my own dreams. I started working towards that. Had a venture. By God's grace, I completed the engineering. I'm a little bit ashamed to say that in front of you guys because I aligned myself there a little bit. I did well. So now the venture was really good and we started solving some of the interesting problems in those days. I was quite successful and I actually got displaced. The soldier in me made me to take more risks than what I could have actually digested. Something went wrong. The venture failed. And I was terribly displaced to the other side of the story. Now, without going into much details, taking the risk in too much than what we could have actually adopted was one of the main reasons. If you really see the recent examples, one of the startups that actually challenged some of the established firms like 99acres.com and all of that, the founder probably turned the span a little harder than it could have been, questioned the corporate norms a little harder than what it was supposed to be, So cause the displacement. Some of you probably might recognize what I'm talking about. If you really take a guy who has the strength in analytical skills, he applies that analytical skills everywhere. Now, we also know that the gut feel is something that which we have to apply. And there are several researches and the books published that, gut actually helps. And there are several papers that are actually published that the market researchers have failed miserably. Now, if the guy who has the strength on the analytical skills keeps on using the same strength and applies in the wrong direction, he probably will align to one of these displacements. And we have to be careful about that. The most important thing here, when we are actually doing this path, when we are in this path of innovation, there's always the risk of failure. And you actually know there are so many people who failed. I don't want to name them because I'm not so great to name, because automatically you try to connect to them. They came out of those failures. Many failures, right? We have several of those examples. But when we are terribly displaced onto the failure, we tend to apply the same strength and make the situation even worse. Just to take an example on here, this great artist, British artist, this is Lost painting. I actually don't see anything wrong in this. It's a wonderful painting. And he committed suicide mainly because he couldn't digest the fact that abstract painting is getting recognized. I can assure you that he would have made even wonderful paintings if he would have actually continued it. The only thing that happened here, the imagination that he was thriving on, the same strength he applied in the wrong direction. We have actually seen several cases where, we have the so-called great artists who have actually landed in the state of depression, right? I don't really understand why they should have actually landed in a depression, mainly because they're applying their core strength, which is imagination, in the wrong direction. The earliest references to the knowledge workers in our culture is Rishis. Rishis were actually the true knowledge workers because they were living through thinking, and the only thing that they were doing was that. This is what they have for us, right, as references. Now, if you see this statement, yad bhavam tad bhavati, this is a very powerful, very important thing, because you become what you think. We spoke about thinking, how powerful it is, imagination, how powerful it is. So this is 100% true. And Mr. Rangan actually achieved the alternate Mridangam because he continuously imagined how he can actually develop the one without animal skin. Am I right? Right? It was going through the mind day and night, right? That's what it is. It's the power of imagination. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. The next beautiful thing, which is from Bhagavad Gita, karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. This is nothing to do with escapism. Please understand this. This is nothing to do with desirelessness or nothing to do with doing things without even caring about the results. That's not the true statement here. When you do things for certain reason, if you get displaced, either ways, even to the positive side or to the negative side of it, don't get yourself displaced. You maintain the equilibrium. In case if you get displaced, peacefully do your duty with due diligence, work backwards, find your home back, and keep the state of equilibrium. If you do this, I can definitely assure you that everything will be all right all the time. Sarve jana sukhino bhavantu. Thank you.